Hey, you there. Picture this, a tiny, quiet little town. The kind of place where nothing big or exciting ever happens. Birds chirp in the trees. Kids ride bikes down the street. Old folks sit on porches, sipping lemonade. That's where Sarah Miller lived. She wasn't loud or flashy. She didn't stand out much. Sarah was blind, so she couldn't see a thing. She walked everywhere with her big, shaggy guide dog, Max. He was her best buddy, always by her side. Most people in town didn't pay her much attention. She seemed so normal, right? Just a lady tapping her cane on the sidewalk, Max walking next to her with his soft paws padding along. But oh boy, were they wrong about her and Max too. Before we start this wild story, I've got a quick question for you. Have you ever met someone who surprised you with a secret? Like, maybe they seemed super quiet, but then bam, they turned out to be really cool or sneaky. Drop a yes or no in the comments below. I'd love to know. Oh, and hey, if you like crazy stories like this one, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, I've got more fun tales coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. Okay, back to Sarah and Max. Let's set the scene. It was a sunny day in that sleepy town. The sky was bright blue, not a cloud anywhere. A soft wind blew through the trees, making the leaves wiggle just a little. Sarah stepped out of her small house. It was a cute place, white walls, a red door, and flowers in the yard. She wore a plain blue dress and dark glasses over her eyes. Those glasses hid the fact she couldn't see. Her cane was white with a red tip, and she held it tight in her hand. Tap, tap, tap it went as she walked. Max was right there, like always. He was a big dog with thick, messy fur. It was kind of brown and kind of gray, all mixed together. His ears flopped a little, and his tail wagged slow and steady. He wore a harness that hooked to Sarah's hand, guiding her along. They looked like a team, a quiet, simple team. Sarah and Max walked down the street, same as they did every day. The town was small, so everyone knew everyone. People saw Sarah coming and nodded hello. "Morning, Sarah," said old Mr. Jenkins from his porch. He was rocking in his chair, holding a newspaper he wasn't really reading. "Hi, Mr. Jenkins," Sarah answered with a small smile. Her voice was soft, like she didn't want to bother anyone. Max didn't bark or make a sound. He just kept walking, his big paws thumping on the ground. Kids zoomed by on their bikes, laughing and shouting. "Hey, Sarah." "Hey, Max," they called. Sarah waved her hand a little. She couldn't see them, but she heard their happy voices. To most folks, Sarah seemed plain. Just a blind lady with her dog. Nothing special, right? That's what they thought. People would whisper about her sometimes when she passed by. "Poor blind lady," they'd say, shaking their heads. "Must be tough, not seeing the world." Some felt sorry for her. Others didn't think about her at all. She was just there, part of the town, like the old oak tree in the park or the rusty mailbox on Main Street. Nobody stopped to wonder if there was more to her story. Nobody asked why Max was so calm all the time, or why his eyes looked so sharp when he turned his head. They just saw what was on the outside, a lady and her dog. An easy target, some might say. But here's the thing, looks can trick you. Sarah wasn't just some helpless person tapping her cane. And Max? Oh, Max was way more than a regular guide dog. There was a secret hiding behind those dark glasses she wore. A big, jaw-dropping secret that nobody in town had a clue about. Not the kids on their bikes. Not Mr. Jenkins with his newspaper. Not even nosy Mrs. Carter, who watched everyone from her window with her little binoculars. Nope, nobody knew the real story about Sarah and Max. Not yet. Let's paint the picture a little more. That day, Sarah decided to head to the park. It wasn't far, just a few streets over. She liked sitting on a bench there, feeling the sun on her face. Max liked it too. He'd stretch out on the grass, his big body flopped down like a furry rug. The park was a happy place. Birds sang in the trees. Squirrels ran around, chasing each other up and down the trunks. Sometimes, a kid would kick a ball nearby, and you'd hear it bounce, bounce, bounce. Sarah couldn't see any of it, but she could hear it all. She'd sit there, smiling, while Max rested his head near her feet. It was their little routine. As they walked toward the park, people kept going about their day. The mailman waved from his truck. "Nice day, Sarah," he called. "Sure is," she said back. A lady pushed a stroller past her, the wheels squeaking a little. A dog barked from someone's yard, and Max turned his head toward the sound. But he didn't bark back. He never did. He was too cool for that, too steady. People noticed how quiet he was. "That's a good dog," they'd say. "Never makes a fuss." And Sarah would nod. "He's the best," she'd reply. But she didn't tell them the whole truth. She didn't say why Max was so good, so calm, so different. See, Sarah and Max had a history, a wild one. They weren't always just a lady and her guide dog walking through a sleepy town. There was more to them, way more. But Sarah kept it locked up tight, like a treasure chest with a big, heavy lid. She didn't talk about it. She didn't need to. Max knew, and that was enough. Together, they moved through life, looking simple on the outside. But inside, they were something else entirely. Let's slow down a second and zoom in on Max. He was a big dog, sure, but he wasn't loud or jumpy like some dogs. He didn't chase squirrels or bark at cars. His fur was thick and soft, the kind you'd want to pet if you got close. His eyes were dark and shiny, always watching. If you looked at him long enough, you might think, that dog seems smart. And you'd be right. Max wasn't just smart, he was super smart. He had to be, for reasons nobody in town could guess. His harness fit him perfect, like it was made just for him. It had a little tag that said Max in tiny letters. Nothing fancy, nothing to make you wonder. But if you knew the truth, that tag might as well have said hero. Sarah, too, she wasn't what she seemed. She moved slow and careful, her cane tapping the ground. Tap, tap, tap. It helped her feel where she was going. She couldn't see the trees or the sky or the kids on their bikes. But she didn't need to. She had Max, and she had something else, guts. Deep down, Sarah was tough. Tougher than anyone knew. She didn't look it, though. With her quiet voice and small smile, she seemed soft, maybe even weak. That's what people thought when they saw her. "Poor Sarah," they'd say. "All alone, no eyes to see." But they didn't know her story. They didn't know what she'd been through, or what she could do. Back to that sunny day. Sarah and Max kept walking, step by step. The town buzzed around them, but it was a lazy kind of buzz. A car rolled by, slow and easy. A bell jingled as someone opened the door to the little store on the corner. The air smelled like fresh grass and warm sunshine. Sarah tilted her head a little, like she was soaking it all in. Max stayed close, his fur brushing her leg now and then. They were almost at the park now. Just one more street to go. But here's where things get interesting. Sarah and Max didn't know it yet, but trouble was coming. Not right that second, but soon. It was waiting around the corner, like a shadow you don't see until it's too late. The town was quiet now, but it wouldn't stay that way. Something or someone was about to shake things up. And when that happened, everyone would find out the truth about Sarah and Max. The real truth. The kind that makes your jaw drop and your eyes go wide. For now, though, they just kept walking. Tap, tap, tap went the cane. Pad, pad, pad went Max's paws. The sun shone down, bright and warm. Birds kept singing. Kids kept laughing. Nobody had a clue what was coming. Nobody knew that Sarah and Max weren't just a blind lady and her dog. They were something bigger, something stronger, something wilder. People thought they were an easy target. They thought wrong. So, what's the secret? What's hiding behind Sarah's dark glasses and Max's calm stare? I won't spill it yet. Nope, you've got to stick around for that. But I'll give you a tiny hint, Sarah and Max weren't always in this little town. They came from somewhere else, somewhere loud and dangerous. And what Max could do? Oh, it was way more than just guiding Sarah across the street. Way more. Let's pause here for a sec. Think about it, who's the quietest person you know? Someone who doesn't talk much, doesn't show off. Could they have a secret too? Maybe they're tougher than you think. Maybe they're like Sarah and Max, hiding something awesome. Drop your guess in the comments, I'm curious what you think. And don't forget that subscribe button. Hit it, and we'll keep this story rolling together. Sarah and Max reached the park. She found her favorite bench and sat down. Max flopped onto the grass, stretching out with a big, lazy yawn. The sun felt good. The breeze felt good. Everything was peaceful. But peace doesn't last forever, does it? Not when trouble's on the way. And trust me, trouble was coming, big, loud, mean trouble. Soon, everyone would see what Sarah and Max were really made of. Soon, the town wouldn't be so quiet anymore. It all started on a sunny afternoon. The little town was quiet, as usual. The sun shone bright in the sky, making everything warm and golden. Birds chirped in the trees. A soft breeze moved the leaves just a little. Sarah Miller was out walking, like she did every day. She was blind, so she couldn't see the pretty day, but she could feel it. Her cane went tap, tap, tap on the ground. Her big, shaggy guide dog, Max, walked right beside her. He wore his harness, guiding her with his steady steps. Pad, pad, pad went his paws. They were crossing the street, heading toward the little store on the corner. Sarah wanted to buy some bread. It was a normal day, or so she thought. Then came the rumble. It started low, like a growl from far away. Sarah tilted her head, listening. Max's ears perked up too. The sound got louder and louder. Rumble, rumble, roar. 3 big motorcycles rolled into town. Dust kicked up behind them. The noise bounced off the houses, loud enough to shake the windows. People stopped what they were doing. Kids on bikes turned to look. Old Mr. Jenkins peeked over his newspaper. Everyone saw them, 3 bikers, big and tough, riding into their quiet little world. These weren't friendly bikers. Nope, not at all. They wore black leather jackets that creaked when they moved. Their boots were heavy, stomping the ground when they stopped. They laughed loud, like they didn't care who heard. Trouble was written all over them. You could see it in their smirks, their messy hair, their mean eyes. The leader was a big guy named Jake. He was the tallest, the loudest, the toughest looking of the bunch. His jacket had a patch with a skull on it. His hair was wild, sticking out under his helmet. When he grinned, his teeth flashed like he was up to no good. The other 2 followed him like shadows, one skinny with a pointy nose, the other short with a scruffy beard. They looked like a pack of wolves, hungry for something to mess with. Sarah and Max were right in the middle of the street when the bikers roared up. Jake spotted them first. His eyes locked on Sarah, and a sneaky smirk spread across his face. He didn't see a strong lady. He didn't see a smart dog. He saw a blind woman with a cane, someone small, someone easy to pick on. Well, what's this, he said, his voice loud and rough. He twisted the handle on his bike, making the engine growl even more. Vroom. Vroom. The sound was so big it made the windows rattle again. Sarah froze. Her hand tightened on Max's harness. She couldn't see Jake, but she heard him. She felt the rumble under her feet. Move it, lady. Jake yelled. His voice cut through the air like a knife. He leaned forward on his bike, staring at her. The other two bikers laughed, mean and sharp. They started circling her, their bikes moving slow like sharks around a fish. What's the matter? The skinny one jeered. Can't see where you're going. His laugh was high and nasty. The short one joined in, snorting. Maybe she needs a map, he shouted. They kept circling, closer and closer. The engines roared, loud and scary. Dust swirled around Sarah's feet. Her dress fluttered in the wind from their bikes. Max stayed calm. He didn't bark. He didn't jump. His big body stood still, right next to Sarah. His ears were up, pointy and alert. His dark eyes locked on Jake, watching every move. If you looked close, you'd see something in those eyes, something sharp, something strong. But the bikers didn't look close. They didn't care. They just saw a big, quiet dog and a lady who couldn't fight back. Or so they thought. Sarah didn't panic. She didn't scream or run. She kept her cool, even with those bikes so close. Just passing through, she said softly. Her voice was small but steady. She didn't sound scared. She sounded like she'd seen worse. Jake didn't like that. He wanted her to jump. He wanted her to cry. Her calm voice made his smirk twist into a sneer. He leaned closer, so close she could smell the gas from his bike. You're in our way, blind girl, he said, his words slow and mean. Better watch yourself. He revved his engine again, vroom, like a warning. The sound hit Sarah like a wave, but she didn't move. The townsfolk watched from their windows. Mrs. Carter peeked through her curtains, her binoculars shaking a little. Mr. Jenkins set his newspaper down, his mouth open. Kids stood frozen on their bikes, eyes wide. Everyone saw what was happening. Everyone heard the bikers' loud voices and roaring engines. But nobody stepped out. Who would? These guys looked mean, really mean. Their jackets were tough. Their bikes were big. Their laughs were cold. Nobody wanted to get in their way. Nobody wanted to help Sarah. They just watched, quiet and scared. Jake straightened up, looking proud. He thought he'd won already. He thought Sarah was weak, helpless, nothing. The skinny biker circled one more time, so close his wheel almost touched Max's tail. Look at her, he shouted. Standing there like a statue. The short one laughed again, slapping his knee. Maybe she's lost, he said. They kept going, tossing mean words like rocks. Hey, lady, where's your babysitter? What's that mutt gonna do, lick us? Move it or we'll move you. Each word was loud, each laugh was sharp. They wanted to make her feel small. They wanted her to run away. But Sarah didn't run. She stood there, gripping Max's harness. Her cane rested against her leg, still and quiet. Her face didn't show fear. It showed something else, something the bikers didn't see. Max didn't growl or snap. He just watched. His tail didn't wag. His body didn't shake. He was like a rock, strong and steady. If you knew dogs, you might think, that's not a normal dog. But Jake and his crew? They didn't know dogs. They didn't know anything. They just saw what they wanted to see, a blind lady and her pet, easy to scare, easy to push around. The bikers stopped circling. Jake parked his bike right in front of Sarah, blocking her path. The engine growled low, like a beast waiting to pounce. He crossed his arms, staring down at her. "You deaf too," he said. "I said move." The skinny one pulled up on her left, the short one on her right. They boxed her in, their bikes like a wall. The air felt heavy now. The sun was still bright, but it didn't feel warm anymore. It felt like something bad was about to happen. The street was quiet, except for the rumble of those engines and the bikers' rough voices. Sarah took a slow breath. She couldn't see their faces, but she heard their words. She felt the vibrations from their bikes. She knew they were big. She knew they were mean. But she didn't flinch. "I'm going," she said, her voice still soft. She tapped her cane once tap and took a tiny step forward. Max moved with her, smooth and sure. Jake laughed, loud and ugly. "Going? You're too slow, blind girl," he said. He revved his engine again, louder than ever. Vroom. Vroom, trying to make her jump. She didn't. Max didn't either. They just kept moving, slow and steady, like the bikers weren't even there. That made Jake mad. He didn't like being ignored. He didn't like that Sarah wasn't scared. "Hey," he shouted. "You think you're tough?" He swung his leg off his bike and stomped closer. His boots hit the ground hard. Thump, thump. He towered over Sarah, his shadow falling across her. The skinny biker and the short one stayed on their bikes, grinning. "Get her, Jake," the skinny one yelled. "Show her who's boss," the short one added. They thought this was fun. They thought Sarah was nothing. They thought Max was just a dumb dog. The townsfolk held their breath. Mrs. Carter's binoculars shook even more. Mr. Jenkins stood up from his chair, his newspaper forgotten. A kid dropped his bike, staring. Everyone saw Jake looming over Sarah. Everyone heard his mean words. But still, nobody moved. They were too afraid. These bikers weren't just loud, they were scary. What could anyone do? Sarah was all alone out there. Just her and Max against three big, tough guys. It didn't look good. Little did Jake know, he'd just picked the wrong person to mess with. Sarah wasn't what she seemed. Max wasn't either. They weren't scared. They weren't weak. Something was hiding inside them, something big, something strong. The bikers didn't see it. The townsfolk didn't see it. But it was there, waiting, like a storm building behind the clouds. Jake thought he was in charge. He thought he could push Sarah around. He thought wrong. The tension hung in the air, thick and heavy. Jake stood close, his breath loud and hot. Sarah stayed still, her hand on Max's harness. Max stared up at Jake, his eyes sharp and steady. The skinny biker revved his engine again, just for fun. The short one chuckled, low and mean. The street felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in. Something was going to happen. Something big. But not yet. Not right this second. Sarah and Max weren't ready to show their cards. They were waiting just a little longer. The bikers didn't know it, but they were digging a hole. Every mean word, every loud laugh, every rev of their engines, it was all piling up. They thought they were winning. They thought Sarah was an easy target. They had no idea what was coming. No idea at all. The sun kept shining. The birds kept chirping. But the quiet little town wasn't so quiet anymore. Trouble had rolled in, and it was about to get a whole lot louder. The trouble didn't stop after that first day. Nope, those bikers decided to stick around. They liked the quiet little town too much, or maybe they just liked causing a fuss. For the next few days, they were everywhere. Their big motorcycles roared up and down the streets, loud enough to wake babies and scare cats. Vroom. Vroom. The sound bounced off the houses and shook the trees. People started closing their windows. Kids stopped riding bikes so much. The town didn't feel as peaceful anymore. Sarah kept going about her days, though. She wasn't the kind to hide. Every morning, she'd step out of her little white house with the red door. Her cane went tap, tap, tap on the ground. Her big, shaggy guide dog, Max, stayed right by her side. His harness clicked softly as he walked. Pad, pad, pad went his paws. Sarah couldn't see the bikers, but she heard them. She felt the rumble of their engines. She knew they were still around, watching her, waiting for a chance to be mean again. And oh boy, did they take every chance they got. Whenever Sarah walked by, the bikers would roar past her on their bikes. They'd come so close the wind from their engines made her dress flutter. "Hey, lady," they'd shout, loud and rude. "Where's your babysitter?" Jake, the big leader with the wild hair, always yelled the loudest. His voice was rough, like gravel crunching under boots. The skinny biker with the pointy nose would laugh, high and sharp. "Yeah, who's gonna help you cross the street?" he'd holler. The short one with the scruffy beard would snort and add, "Maybe that mutt can carry you." They thought they were so funny. They thought Sarah was a joke. One afternoon, it got worse. Sarah was walking to the park, same as always. The sun was high, and the air smelled like flowers. Max guided her along, steady and calm. Then came the roar of vroom. The bikers zoomed up fast. Jake was in front, his leather jacket shining in the sun. He slowed down just enough to lean toward Sarah. "Hey, blind girl," he shouted. "You're too slow for this town." The skinny one tossed something, an empty soda can. It flew through the air and landed with a clank on the sidewalk, right near Max's paws. It rolled a little, shiny and dented. The short biker laughed so hard he almost tipped his bike over. "Oops," he yelled. "Better watch out." Max didn't jump. He didn't bark. He didn't even twitch. That soda can was so close it almost touched his fur, but he just stood there, quiet and steady. His big, dark eyes turned toward the bikers. He stared at them, really stared. If you looked close, you'd see something in those eyes. Something strong. Something smart. But the bikers didn't look close. They were too busy laughing, too busy being mean. "Look at that dumb dog," Jake said, pointing. "Doesn't even move." The skinny one nodded. "Probably scared stiff." They roared their engines again and sped off, leaving dust swirling in the air. Sarah didn't say much. She bent down slow and easy, patting Max's head. "Good boy," she whispered. Her voice was soft, like a secret. Then she said something else, so quiet nobody else heard, "Not yet, boy." Max wagged his tail just once, like he understood. They kept walking, tap, tap, tap with the cane, pad, pad, pad with his paws. People watching from their windows thought Sarah was scared. They saw her freeze when the bikers came close. They saw her head dip when they shouted. "Poor Sarah," they'd whisper. "She must be terrified." But they were wrong. Sarah wasn't scared. She was waiting. See, Sarah wasn't just some helpless lady. She didn't jump or cry when the bikers got loud. She didn't run away when they threw that can. She stayed calm, super calm. And Max? He wasn't just a guide dog. He didn't flinch at that soda can. He didn't bark at the roaring bikes. He just watched, like he knew something the bikers didn't. Every rude word they shouted, every mean laugh they let out, every taunt they threw, it was all piling up. They were digging their own hole, and they didn't even know it. The days went on like that. The bikers kept showing up. One morning, Sarah was at the little store, buying her bread. She stood by the counter, waiting for the lady to bag it up. Max sat beside her, his fur brushing the floor. Outside, the bikers rolled by slow this time, like they were hunting. Jake peeked through the window and grinned. "There she is," he called to his crew. They parked their bikes right in front of the store, engines rumbling low. "Hey, blind girl!" Jake shouted through the glass. "Need help carrying that bread?" The skinny one banged on the window. Thump, thump. "Yeah, don't drop it," he yelled. The short one laughed and revved his engine, loud and sharp. The store lady frowned. "Those boys are trouble," she muttered. Sarah just nodded, her face still calm. "They'll get bored soon," she said softly. She took her bread and walked out, Max guiding her past the bikers. "Ah, leaving so soon?" Jake teased. He kicked a pebble her way. It bounced near her feet, but she didn't stop. Max didn't either. They just kept going, like the bikers were nothing but noise. The townsfolk watched and shook their heads. "She's brave," some said. "She's crazy," others thought. But nobody knew the truth, not yet. Another time, Sarah was sitting on her porch. It was a warm afternoon, and she had a glass of water in her hand. Max lay beside her, his head resting on his paws. The street was quiet until it wasn't. Vroom. The bikers came tearing around the corner. They slowed down when they saw her. "Hey, lady," Jake called. "Nice house. Too bad you can't see it." The skinny one smirked. "Bet that dog can't see it either." The short one tossed a stick this time. It landed with a clatter near Max's nose. Max lifted his head, looked at it, then put his head back down. He didn't growl. He didn't move. He just stared at the bikers with those sharp, steady eyes. Sarah sipped her water, slow and easy. "Not yet, boy," she whispered again. Max's ears twitched, like he was listening hard. The bikers laughed and sped off, their engines echoing down the street. Mr. Jenkins, rocking on his porch nearby, called over, "You okay, Sarah?" She smiled a little. "I'm fine," she said. But her smile wasn't scared. It was something else, something sneaky, something strong. Mr. Jenkins didn't notice. Nobody did. They all thought she was just taking it, putting up with the rudeness. They were so wrong. Then came the night at the diner. It was a Friday, and the sky was turning dark. Stars popped out, twinkling above the town. Sarah liked the diner. It was cozy, with red seats and a big window. She sat at her favorite table near the front, sipping tea. Max curled up by her feet, his big body flopped on the floor. His fur spread out like a rug. The diner smelled like burgers and pie, yummy smells that made your tummy rumble. A few folks sat around, eating and chatting. The jukebox played a soft song in the corner. Outside, the bikers rolled up. Their engines growled as they parked right by the big window. Jake hopped off his bike first, stretching his arms. He cracked his knuckles, pop, 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 and looked inside. He saw Sarah sitting there, calm as ever, with Max at her feet. His smirk grew wide. Well, well," he said to his crew. "There's our little friend." The skinny one peeked in too. "Sipping tea like a princess," he sneered. The short one chuckled. "Let's have some fun," he said, rubbing his hands together. Jake nodded. "Yeah, let's have some fun," he said, his voice low and mean. He cracked his knuckles again, louder this time. The skinny one banged on his bike seat, grinning. The short one kicked the ground, sending a little rock flying. They stood there, staring through the window at Sarah and Max. Inside, the diner folks glanced up. Some frowned. Some looked away. Nobody said a word. Sarah kept sipping her tea, like she didn't hear the engines or see the shadows outside. Max didn't move either. His eyes were half closed, but if you looked close, you'd see them flicker toward the window just for a second. The bikers didn't know what was coming. They thought they were in charge. They thought Sarah was weak, and Max was nothing. Every day they'd messed with her, shouting, throwing things, laughing. They'd made it worse for themselves. Sarah wasn't scared. She wasn't helpless. She was waiting, counting every rude word, every mean move. And Max? He was waiting too. His calm wasn't fear. It was power they didn't see. The air outside the diner felt heavy now. The bikers stood tall, ready to storm in. Jake took a step closer to the door, his boots thumping loud. The skinny one and the short one followed, smirking like they'd already won. Inside, Sarah set her teacup down. Her hand rested on Max's head. "Not yet," she whispered one more time. Max's tail thumped the floor just once. The diner folks watched, holding their breath. Something was building. Something big. The bikers had no idea, but they were about to find out. It happened so fast nobody saw it coming. 1 minute, everything was quiet in the diner. Sarah sat at her table, sipping tea. Max was curled up by her feet, his shaggy fur spread out on the floor. The diner smelled like warm pie and coffee. The jukebox hummed a soft tune. Folks ate their food, chatting low. Outside, the night was dark, stars twinkling high above. The bikers, Jake and his crew, had been parked by the big window, planning their next mean move. Then, bam! The door flew open with a loud bang. The bikers stormed in like a thunderclap. Their boots stomped hard on the floor, thump, thump, thump. Dust shook off their leather jackets. Their voices were loud, filling the whole diner. Jake, the big leader, led the way. His wild hair stuck out, and his eyes gleamed with trouble. The skinny biker with the pointy nose followed close. The short one with the scruffy beard came last, grinning wide. They didn't walk, they marched, like they owned the place. People stopped eating. Forks clattered on plates. Eyes turned to watch. The air felt tight, like something big was about to explode. Jake stopped right by Sarah's table. He crossed his arms, staring down at her. "Hey, blind lady," he shouted. His voice was rough and mean, loud enough to rattle the windows. "Your mud's taking up too much space." He pointed at Max, sprawled out on the floor. "Time to move." The skinny one laughed, sharp and nasty. "Yeah, get that dog outta here," he yelled. The short one nodded, kicking a chair out of his way. It scraped the floor with a screech. Jake smirked, thinking he'd scare Sarah easy. He bent down, reaching one big hand toward Max, like he was gonna shove him hard. "Move it, ya dumb dog," he growled. "Big mistake. Huge mistake." In a flash, faster than you can blink, Max was up. His big body shot off the floor like a rocket. His teeth bared, white and sharp, gleaming in the diner's light. A deep growl rumbled from his chest, low and loud, like thunder rolling closer. The sound filled the room, shaking the air. Jake's hand froze mid-reach. His smirk vanished. His eyes went wide, big as saucers. "Whoa, easy, dog," he sputtered, stumbling back. His boots slipped on the floor, and he almost fell. But Max wasn't playing. He wasn't stopping. With one big leap, Max jumped forward. His paws, strong like steel, slammed down on Jake's chest. Boom! Jake hit the ground hard, flat on his back. Max pinned him there, holding him down like a giant rock. The diner went wild. The skinny biker and the short one froze where they stood. Their mouths dropped open, like fish out of water. Their tough laughs died in their throats. They didn't move. They didn't blink. They just stared. Max stood over Jake, his jaws an inch from the biker's face. His growl kept going, growling deep and scary. His teeth were so close Jake could feel the heat of his breath. Jake's arms flailed, trying to push Max off, but it was no use. Max was too strong, too heavy, too fast. His paws pressed down harder, keeping Jake stuck. The big, tough biker wasn't so tough now. He looked small, pinned under Max like a bug. Sarah didn't rush. She didn't shout. She stood up slow and steady, her cane tapping once on the floor. Tap. Everyone turned to her. The diner folks, the bikers, even Jake on the ground, all eyes were on Sarah now. She pushed her chair back with a little scrape. Her dark glasses hid her eyes, but her face was calm, super calm. She rested one hand on the table, the other on Max's harness. Then she spoke, her voice clear and strong. "Max, hold," she said. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a bell. Max didn't budge. His growl softened, but his paws stayed firm. His jaws stayed close to Jake's face, ready if he had to be. He listened to Sarah, like always. The skinny biker took a step back, bumping into a table. A cup fell and rolled clink, clink. The short one's hands shook, his grin gone. Jake squirmed under Max, his breath fast and loud. "Get him off," he yelled, but it came out weak, like a whine. Sarah ignored him. She turned her head toward the bikers, slow and sure. "You should know something," she said. Her voice was still calm, but it had power now, like a river under ice. "Max isn't just my guide dog." She paused, letting the words sink in. The diner was dead quiet. No forks moved. No one breathed. Even the jukebox seemed to hush. Sarah kept going. "He's a retired Navy SEAL K-9, she said. "Trained to take down guys way tougher than you." The words hit like a thunderbolt. Jake's eyes got wider, if that was even possible. What?" he stammered, his voice shaking. The skinny one gasped. The short one dropped his helmet, it clattered loud on the floor. "Navy SEAL K-9? That's a military dog, a super tough, super smart dog trained for big, dangerous jobs. Max wasn't just some pet. He was a hero, a fighter, a protector. And he was showing it right now, holding Jake down like it was nothing." Sarah smiled, just a little. It wasn't a big grin, just a tiny curve of her lips. But it was strong. "Yeah," she said. "And me? I used to train him." Another pause. The diner folks leaned closer, mouths open. "Back when I worked with the SEALs," she added. "Lost my sight on a mission, but I didn't lose my fight." Boom, that was it. The big reveal. Sarah wasn't just a blind lady. She was a Navy SEAL trainer. She'd been tough, brave, and badass long before she came to this quiet town. And Max? He was her partner from those wild days, ready to jump into action anytime she needed him. The diner stayed silent for a long beat. You could hear a pin drop. Jake stopped squirming. His tough guy act melted away, like ice in the sun. He lay there, pinned, staring up at Max's teeth. "And Navy SEAL," he mumbled, like he couldn't believe it. The skinny biker backed up more, tripping over a chair. It fell with a crash. The short one looked like he might run, his eyes darting to the door. They weren't laughing now. They weren't shouting. They were scared, really scared. The big, mean bikers who'd roared into town didn't look so big anymore. Let's paint the scene a little more. The diner lights buzzed softly overhead. The big window showed the dark night outside, the bikers' motorcycles parked in a row. Inside, tables were scattered with plates, half-eaten burgers, fries gone cold. The lady behind the counter peeked out, her apron wrinkled, her eyes wide. Old Mr. Tom, who always sat by the jukebox, dropped his spoon into his soup splash. A kid in the corner hugged his mom, whispering, "That dog's cool." Everyone saw it now, Max wasn't just a guide dog. Sarah wasn't just a quiet lady. They were something else, something amazing. Max kept Jake down, his growl a low hum now. His fur bristled, making him look even bigger. His paws pressed hard, like they were glued to Jake's chest. Sarah stood tall beside him, her cane in one hand, her head high. She didn't need to see the bikers to know they were shocked. She heard it in their silence, felt it in the air. "You picked the wrong fight," she said, her voice ringing clear. "Max doesn't like bullies. Neither do I." That hit hard. Jake's face went pale. He'd thought Sarah was weak. He'd thought Max was nothing. Oh, how wrong he was. The skinny biker finally found his voice. "A seal dog," he squeaked. "For real?" Sarah nodded. "For real," she said. "He's taken down bad guys bigger than your bikes." The short one gulped loud enough for everyone to hear. "We didn't mean," he started, but Sarah cut him off. "You meant it," she said. "Every word, every laugh, every time you tried to scare me." Max remembers. "I remember." Her words were simple, but they stung. The bikers had messed with her for days, shouting, throwing things, acting tough. Now they saw the truth, and it flipped everything upside down. Jake tried to talk again. "Look, lady," Max growled louder, growling, and Jake shut up fast. His hands went limp at his sides. He wasn't fighting anymore. He was done. The diner folks started whispering. "Did she say Navy SEAL?" one lady asked. "That dog's a hero," said Mr. Tom. "No wonder she's so calm," muttered the counter lady. The kid in the corner grinned big. "Told you he's cool," he said to his mom. The whispers grew, buzzing like bees. Everyone saw Sarah and Max differently now. Sarah tilted her head, listening to the room. She couldn't see the shocked faces, but she didn't need to. She knew what was happening. She'd waited for this moment, waited through all the bikers' rudeness, all their taunts. Now it was here, and it felt good. "Max and I have been through a lot," she said, her voice steady. "Missions, danger, tough stuff. We don't scare easy." She patted Max's head. His tail thumped once, thump against the floor, like he agreed. Jake winced under those big paws, too scared to move. The skinny biker dropped his tough act too. "We didn't know," he mumbled, looking at the floor. The short one nodded fast. "Yeah, we thought." Sarah stopped him. "You thought I was weak," she said. "You thought Max was just a dog. You were wrong." Her words were like a slap, not loud, but sharp. The bikers had no comeback. They stood there, small and quiet, their big bikes forgotten outside. The diner folks nodded to each other. They got it now. Sarah and Max were tougher than anyone had guessed. Max's growl faded, but his eyes stayed on Jake. His jaws hovered close, a warning. Sarah stepped forward, her cane tapping, slow tap, tap. She stood over Jake, her shadow falling across him. "Next time," she said, "think before you pick on someone. You never know who they really are." Jake nodded fast, his head bobbing like a toy. Okay, he gasped. "I get it." But Sarah wasn't done. She'd saved the best for last, and it felt right to let it all out now. The diner was electric. The air buzzed with awe. The kid's mom hugged him tighter. Mr. Tom clapped once, loud and happy. The counter lady smiled, her hands on her hips. They'd all seen the bikers strut in, big and bold. Now they saw them crumble. Max had flipped the game. Sarah had flipped it harder. The big reveal wasn't just words, it was action, power, truth. Navy SEAL K9. Navy SEAL trainer. The quiet lady and her dog weren't quiet anymore. They were loud in the best way. The diner was still buzzing after the big reveal. Max stood over Jake, his big paws like anchors on the biker's chest. His growl was gone now, but his dark eyes stayed sharp, watching close. Jake lay flat on the floor, his wild hair messy, his tough guy face gone. He didn't look big or mean anymore, just scared and small. The skinny biker and the short one stood frozen by the door, their mouths still open. The air felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath. Sarah's words about Max being a Navy SEAL K9 and her being his trainer hung there, loud and strong. Nobody could believe it. But they saw it now, and it changed everything. Sarah stepped closer to Jake. Her cane went tap, tap, tap on the diner floor, slow and steady. She stopped right beside him, her shadow falling over his face. Max didn't move, not yet. He waited for her, like always. Sarah's voice came out calm but firm, like a teacher who means business. "Here's the deal," she said. "You leave this town. Now. Or Max and I show you what we learned in the military." She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her words were enough, strong, clear, and full of power. Jake's eyes got big again. "Oh, okay," he stammered, nodding fast. "We'll go. We'll go." His voice shook, all squeaky and weak. Sarah tilted her head, like she was making sure he meant it. Then she patted Max's head. "Max, off," she said softly. Max stepped back, slow and easy. His big paws lifted off Jake's chest, thump, thump, and he sat down beside Sarah. His tail wagged just a little, like he was proud. Jake scrambled up, rubbing his chest where Max had pinned him. He didn't look tough now. He looked like a kid who'd lost a game. The skinny biker and the short one didn't wait. They didn't need to hear Sarah's warning twice. "Let's get out of here," the skinny one yelped, his pointy nose twitching. The short one nodded fast, his scruffy beard bouncing. "Yeah, I'm done," he said. They turned and bolted for the door, tripping over chairs in their rush. One chair fell with a loud crash bang. The skinny one stumbled into a table, knocking over a salt shaker. It rolled across the floor, clink, clink. The short one's boot caught on a rug, and he almost fell flat. They didn't care. They just wanted out fast. Jake didn't waste time either. He backed away from Max, hands up like he was scared the dog might jump again. "We're leaving," he shouted, his voice high and shaky. He bumped into the counter, then spun around and ran after his crew. The diner door swung open, creak, and the three bikers spilled outside. Their boots pounded the ground as they raced to their motorcycles. Engines roared to life, vroom, vroom, loud and wild. They peeled away, tires squealing on the road. Dust flew up behind them, a big cloud in the dark night. The sound got smaller and smaller as they sped off, until it was just a hum, then nothing. They were gone. Inside the diner, it was quiet for a second. Then clap, clap, clap. The folks started cheering. "Woohoo," yelled Mr. Tom from his spot by the jukebox. He clapped hard, his spoon still in his soup. "Didn't see that coming," laughed a guy with a burger in his hand. He slapped the table, grinning big. The lady behind the counter clapped too, her apron bouncing. "Good for you, Sarah," she called. The kid in the corner jumped up, pumping his fist. "That was awesome," he shouted. His mom smiled and hugged him tight. The whole diner lit up with noise, claps, cheers, happy voices. Everyone loved it. The big, mean bikers were gone, and Sarah and Max had won. Sarah didn't make a fuss. She just sat back down at her table, slow and easy. Her chair scraped a little as she pulled it in. She picked up her teacup and took a sip, like nothing had happened. The tea was cold now, but she didn't care. Her face was calm, with that tiny smile again, just a little curve of her lips. Max flopped down by her feet, his big body stretching out on the floor. His fur spread like a rug, soft and shaggy. He wagged his tail, thump, thump, slow and proud. He looked happy, like he'd done a good job. And he had. They both had. The diner folks kept talking. "Those bikers won't be back," said Mr. Tom, nodding. "Not after that." The burger guy laughed again. "Did you see Jake's face? He was scared silly." The counter lady leaned over, wiping the counter with a rag. "Sarah, you're something else," she said. "You and that dog, wow." Sarah just nodded. "Thanks," she said softly. She didn't need to say more. The cheers said it all. She'd shown everyone who she really was, and it felt good. Word spread fast, super fast. By morning, the whole town knew what happened. People talked about it everywhere. At the little store, the lady behind the counter told everyone who came in. "Sarah's a Navy SEAL trainer," she said, her eyes wide. "And Max? He's a SEAL dog. Took down that big biker like nothing." Kids on their bikes rode up and down the streets, shouting the story. "Max pinned him. Sarah told em to leave," they yelled, grinning big. Old Mr. Jenkins sat on his porch, rocking in his chair. "Heard it all," he said to anyone who passed. "Those bikers didn't stand a chance." Mrs. Carter, the nosy lady with the binoculars, spread the news too. She called her friends on the phone. "Ring, ring. You won't believe it," she said. "Sarah's tougher than tough. And that dog, oh my." By lunchtime, every house, every shop, every corner of the town buzzed with the tale. Sarah and Max weren't just the blind lady and her dog anymore. They were heroes, real heroes. People couldn't stop talking about it. The quiet little town wasn't so quiet now, not with a story this big. The ones who'd felt sorry for Sarah before? They changed their tune. No more poor Sarah whispers. No more sad looks when she walked by. Now, they saw her different. She wasn't weak. She wasn't helpless. She was strong, super strong. And Max? He was a star. People who'd walked past him without a thought now stopped to stare. "That's the SEAL dog," they'd say, pointing. "He's awesome." Kids ran up when Sarah and Max went by, waving and giggling. "Hi, Sarah." "Hi, Max," they'd call. Sarah would wave back, her cane tapping along. Max would wag his tail, thump, thump, like he knew he was famous. One day, Sarah walked to the park, same as always. The sun was out, warm and bright. Her blue dress fluttered a little in the breeze. Max padded beside her, his harness clicking softly. People saw her coming and smiled. Mr. Jenkins tipped his hat from his porch. "Morning, Sarah," he said, his voice happy. "Morning," she answered, her tiny smile back. A lady with a stroller slowed down. "You're amazing, Sarah," she said. "You too, Max." Sarah nodded. "Thanks," she said. Max's ears twitched, like he heard it all. At the park, Sarah sat on her favorite bench. Max flopped down in the grass, stretching out big. A few kids ran over, their sneakers squeaking. "Can we pet Max?" they asked, eyes wide. Sarah smiled a little more. "Sure," she said. "He likes that." The kids knelt down, patting Max's shaggy fur. "You're so cool, Max," one said. "You scared those bad guys away," said another. Max wagged his tail, thump, 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 happy as could be. The kids giggled and ran off, telling their friends, "We petted the SEAL dog." Respect grew fast. People didn't just like Sarah and Max, they looked up to them. The store lady started keeping extra treats behind the counter, just for Max. For our hero, she'd say, handing Sarah a little bag of biscuits. Mr. Tom at the diner saved Sarah's table every night, even when it got busy. That's your spot, he'd tell her, grinning. Even Mrs. Carter stopped spying with her binoculars so much. No need, she said. Sarah's the real show now. Everyone wanted to be nice, to say thanks, to show they got it. Sarah and Max weren't to be messed with. The town felt different too. The bikers were gone, and that mean, loud rumble was just a memory. Birds chirped louder. Kids rode bikes again, laughing free. The air smelled like flowers and sunshine, not dust and gas. People walked taller, like they were proud of their little town and proud of Sarah and Max. We've got heroes here, they'd say. Nobody's gonna mess with us now. It was true. Trouble had rolled in, but Sarah and Max rolled it right back out. Days turned into weeks, and the story didn't fade. People kept telling it over fences, at the store, on porches. Remember when Max pinned that biker, they'd say, laughing. Sarah didn't even blink, they'd add. It became the town's big tale, the one they'd never forget. Sarah didn't talk about it much. She didn't need to. She'd done what she had to, and that was enough. Max didn't bark about it either. He just stayed by her side, steady and calm, like always. One afternoon, Sarah sat on her porch with a glass of water. Max lay beside her, his head on his paws. The street was quiet, peaceful quiet, the good kind. A kid rode by on a bike, waving. "Hi, Sarah," he called. She waved back. Mr. Jenkins rocked across the way, tipping his hat again. "Fine day, huh?" he said. "Sure is," Sarah answered. She sipped her water, feeling the sun on her face. Max's tail thumped once, thumped like he agreed. They'd earned this quiet, this respect, this happy little world. Justice was served big time. The bikers got what they deserved, a scare they'd never forget, and a fast trip out of town. Sarah and Max got what they deserved too, respect, loud and clear. No more pity. No more whispers. Just smiles, waves, and hats tipped high. They'd shown the town who they really were, and the town loved them for it. The quiet lady and her shaggy dog weren't quiet anymore, not in people's hearts. They were heroes, plain and simple. Okay, let's take a step back now. The bikers are gone. Sarah and Max are heroes. The town is buzzing with their story. But before we say goodbye, let's think about what it all means. What's the big lesson here? It's simple, but it's big. Don't judge someone by what you think you see. The quiet ones, the ones you overlook, they might just have a strength you'll never forget. Sarah and Max proved it. Real power doesn't need to shout. It just waits for the right moment to strike. And when it does, wow, it's something you can't ignore. Think about it. When those bikers first saw Sarah, what did they see? A lady with a cane, tapping along, blind as can be. They saw her dark glasses, her slow steps, her quiet voice. Easy target, they thought. She's weak. And Max? They saw a big, shaggy dog with floppy ears and a wagging tail. Just a pet, they said. Nothing special. They judged fast, too fast. They didn't look deeper. They didn't ask questions. They didn't wonder if there was more to Sarah and Max than met the eye. Big mistake. Because under that quiet outside was something tough, something strong, something amazing. Sarah didn't need to yell or fight every day. She didn't wave her past around like a flag. She stayed calm, sipping her tea, walking her streets, living her life. Max didn't bark or chase the bikers off at first. He sat still, watching with those sharp eyes, waiting by Sarah's side. They didn't show off. They didn't have to. Their power was hidden, tucked away like a secret treasure. But when the time came, bam, it came out big. Max pinned Jake down like he was nothing. Sarah stood tall and told the truth, Navy SEAL trainer, Navy SEAL K9. That quiet lady and her dog turned the whole game upside down. And the bikers? They ran away, tails between their legs. So, what's that tell us? It's this: you can't always tell who's strong just by looking. The loud ones, the ones who strut around acting tough, they might not be the real deal. Jake thought he was king of the town with his loud bike and mean words. He was wrong. Real strength doesn't need noise. It doesn't need big muscles or a big voice. It's inside, waiting for the right moment. Sarah had it. Max had it. They didn't brag, they just did. And when they did, everyone saw it clear as day. Let's picture it one more time. That diner, all warm and cozy, with red seats and pie smells. The bikers storming in, boots stomping, thinking they'd scare Sarah easy. Max jumping up, fast as lightning, pinning Jake to the floor. Sarah standing there, cane in hand, telling them who she really was. The town cheering as the bikers ran off. It's a picture of power, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that surprises you, that makes you sit up and say, whoa. That's what Sarah and Max gave us. A lesson wrapped in a wild, awesome story. Now, think about your own life. Who's the quiet one you know? Maybe it's a kid at school who doesn't talk much. Maybe it's a neighbor who keeps to themselves. Maybe it's even you. Could they have a secret strength? Could they be hiding something cool, something tough, something big? Sarah was the blind lady nobody noticed until she wasn't. Max was the shaggy dog nobody cared about until he showed his teeth. Next time you see someone quiet, don't judge fast. Don't think, oh, they're nothing. They might just surprise you, like Sarah and Max surprised those bikers. And hey, what about you? You've got power too, you know. Maybe it's not Navy SEAL stuff, maybe it's something else. Maybe you're super good at drawing, or you're great at helping friends, or you're brave in your own way. You don't have to shout it out. You don't have to prove it every day. Just keep it close, like Sarah kept her past, like Max kept his training. Wait for your moment. When it comes, you'll shine, quiet or loud, big or small. That's the trick. Real power waits, then strikes when it's time. Let's imagine something fun for a sec. What if you had a dog like Max? A big, shaggy buddy who's secretly a hero? Picture it, you're walking down your street, and some mean kid starts teasing you. Your dog, let's call him Buddy, looks all calm and sleepy. The kid laughs, thinking he's won. Then bam, Buddy jumps up, growls low, and sends that kid running home. You smile and say, good boy, Buddy. Sounds cool, right? Max was Sarah's buddy. He didn't just guide her, he protected her, fought for her, showed the world she wasn't alone. That's a friend worth having. Or maybe your power doesn't need a dog. Maybe it's all you. Think of Sarah again. She couldn't see, but she didn't let that stop her. She trained SEAL dogs, tough, smart dogs back in the military. She lost her sight on a mission, but she kept going. She moved to a little town, lived her life, faced those bikers without blinking. That's guts. That's strength. You've got your own stuff to face, maybe school, maybe bullies, maybe something hard at home. You can be like Sarah. Keep your head up, stay calm, wait for your chance. When it comes, you'll show 'em what you've got. The town learned that lesson too. They used to whisper, poor Sarah, feeling sorry for her. They saw her cane, her glasses, her slow walk, and thought she was weak. After that diner night, they stopped. They tipped their hats instead. They smiled and waved. They gave Max treats and saved Sarah's table. Why? Because they saw the truth, she wasn't poor anything. She was strong, stronger than Loud Jake, stronger than his roaring bike. The quiet lady and her dog taught them all, don't judge too quick. Look closer. You might miss the real story. So, here's the big takeaway, be smart about people. Don't think you know someone just because of what's outside. The loudest kid in class might be hiding something shaky. The quietest one might be hiding something huge. Sarah and Max were quiet, but their strength roared when it mattered. You can do that too. You don't need a cane or a seal dog, just you, waiting for your moment. When it comes, you'll be ready. And trust me, it'll feel good, like Sarah sipping her tea, like Max wagging his tail after the bikers ran. Hey, before you go, let's talk a bit more. What would you do if you had a dog like Max? Picture it, a big, furry friend who's got your back. Maybe you'd walk tall, knowing he'd scare off trouble. Maybe you'd teach him tricks, just for fun. Maybe you'd feel braver with him around. Drop your answer in the comments, I wanna hear it. Tell me, I'd take Max to school, or I'd let Max chase my brother. Whatever it is, make it fun. I'm reading everyone, promise. And stick around, okay? This story's done, but more crazy ones are coming your way. Wild adventures, cool twists, stuff that'll make you laugh and cheer just like Sarah and Max did. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. It's right there, waiting for you. We're a team now, you and me, ready for more tales. Next time, maybe it's a kid with a secret robot, or a cat that saves the day, who knows. But it'll be awesome, I swear. Let's wrap it up with one last look. Sarah's on her porch, sipping water. Max is by her feet, tail thumping slow. The sun's shining, the town's happy, and the bikers are long gone. That's power, quiet, steady, real. You've got it too, somewhere inside. Don't shout it. Don't rush it. Wait for your moment, then strike. Like Sarah. Like Max. You'll see quiet can be loud when it's time. So, what's your power? What's your moment? Think about it. Maybe you're the next Sarah, the next Max. The world's waiting to find out. See you next time.